You think Betty Crocker cookbooks were filled with wholesome family recipes and timeless comfort food? Think again. These American kitchens across suburban neighborhoods harbored some of the most bizarre, forbidden, and surprisingly disgusting dinner combinations in cooking history. They're real recipes published by real companies in test kitchens with home economists and corporate photographers from 1950 through 1975.
To prepare lamb loaf, just add minced onions, dry breadcrumbs, a little evaporated or fresh milk, and seasoning to a pound of ground lamb.
Let's dig into 25 forgotten dinners you never knew were actually desperate attempts to sell canned goods when one failed recipe meant wasted groceries or neighborhood judgment about your cooking skills. Mother made tuna wiggle every Wednesday in 1958, survival engineering that transformed canned fish into creamy suppers. She opened 2 cans of tuna and 1 can of peas, made white sauce with butter, flour, and milk, combined everything in saucepans, served it ladled over triangular toast points arranged on plates. The kitchen featured a white gas stove, aluminum saucepans, wooden spoons, can openers mounted on walls, bread cut diagonally into triangles. The tuna wiggle was creamy, fishy bland, with peas adding green color and slight sweetness. The white sauce was thick flour paste, binding everything together. It cost $1.75 in 1958, fed 6 people supper, equivalent to $18 today. It proved your ability to follow Betty Crocker efficiency when canned ingredients and white sauce created complete meals that looked fancy through careful plating on toast points. Tuna wiggle disappeared when fresh food movements rejected canned fish in the 1970s, and composed plates became the standard instead of sauce-covered combinations. The supper that once proved cooking skill became evidence of relying on processed foods, something modern dinner culture dismisses as 1950s canned soup cooking despite wiggle recipes appearing in every household cookbook. Mother baked tomato soup cake every Sunday in 1962, desperate innovation that used condensed soup as cake ingredient. She mixed 1 can of Campbell's tomato soup with flour, sugar, eggs, baking soda, and spices, baked it in layer pans for 35 minutes, frosted it with cream cheese icing. The kitchen featured an electric oven, metal layer cake pans, hand mixers, rubber spatulas, cooling racks, offset spatulas for frosting. The tomato soup cake was dense, spicy, moist, with cinnamon and cloves masking tomato flavor. The cream cheese frosting was tangy, sweet, thick, creating contrast with spice cake. It cost $2.40 in 1962, made 12 servings, equivalent to $23 today. It demonstrated your willingness to experiment with Betty Crocker innovation when using soup as cake ingredient, proved you trusted corporate test kitchens over traditional recipes. Mother made Spam pineapple casserole every Friday in 1965, survival-driven creativity that combined canned meat with tropical fruit. She arranged pineapple rings in glass baking dishes, placed Spam slices on top, covered everything with brown sugar and maraschino cherries, baked it until caramelized. The kitchen featured the electric oven, glass Pyrex baking dishes, can openers, metal spatulas, pot holders with floral patterns, paper towels for draining Spam. The Spam pineapple casserole was sweet, salty, fatty, with caramelized sugar coating processed meat. The pineapple was tangy, sweet, soft, adding tropical flavor to pork product. It cost $2.15 in 1965, fed 4 people Friday supper, equivalent to $20 today. It proved your acceptance of Betty Crocker's Hawaiian-inspired recipes when combining Spam with pineapple demonstrated you followed food trends from corporate test kitchens. Spam pineapple casseroles disappeared when sweet-savory combinations fell out of favor in the 1980s, and grilled proteins became the standard instead of canned meat with fruit. Mother made liver pate mold every Saturday for parties in 1961, desperate entertaining that used gelatin to transform organ meat into fancy appetizers. She ground cooked chicken livers with butter and spices, molded the pate in decorative molds, covered everything in clear aspic jelly made from beef gelatin, chilled it overnight until firm and glossy. The kitchen featured metal molds with ornate patterns, grinders for processing livers, double boilers for melting gelatin, refrigerators for setting molds. The aspic-covered pate was jiggly, slippery rich, with liver spreading across crackers. The gelatin was flavorless, wobbly clear, creating shiny coating. It cost $3.20 in 1961, served 20 people at parties, equivalent to $31 today. Mother made perfection salad every Sunday in 1959, survival engineering that suspended vegetables in sweet gelatin, creating side dishes that lasted days. She dissolved lime jello in boiling water, added shredded cabbage, chopped celery, grated carrots, and vinegar, poured everything into ring molds, refrigerated it overnight until firm and jiggly. The kitchen featured aluminum ring molds, box graters for shredding vegetables, wooden spoons for stirring, refrigerators for setting gelatin. The perfection salad was sweet tangy, crunchy with vegetables suspended in lime-flavored gelatin. The texture was jiggly cold crisp, creating odd contrast between soft gelatin and raw vegetables. It cost $1.35 in 1959, fed 8 people, 2 meals, equivalent to $13 today. It proved your commitment to Betty Crocker standards when molded salads demonstrated you owned proper equipment and understood that gelatin salads were sophisticated side dishes for Sunday dinners. Mother made candle salads for children's parties in 1963, desperate entertainment that arranged fruit to resemble candles on lettuce beds. She placed pineapple rings on lettuce leaves, stood banana halves upright in the ring holes, topped each banana with maraschino cherry flames, drizzled mayonnaise down the sides like melting wax. The kitchen featured minimal preparation, just cutting boards, knives for slicing bananas, lettuce for plating, bottles of Hellmann's mayonnaise. The candle salad was sweet, creamy, tropical, with mayonnaise coating fruit, creating odd, savory element. The banana was soft, starchy, bland, standing awkwardly upright. It cost $1.90 in 1963, made 8 individual salads, equivalent to $18 today. It demonstrated your commitment to whimsical presentation when arranging fruit to look like candles, proved you followed Betty Crocker's party planning advice that prioritized visual appeal over flavor logic. Candle salads vanished when the phallic appearance became impossible to ignore in the 1980s, and fruit salads without mayonnaise became the standard. Mother made ham banana rolls every Thursday in 1964, survival-driven creativity that wrapped tropical fruit in lunch meat and covered it with rich sauce. She wrapped banana halves in thin-sliced deli ham, arranged them in baking dishes, covered everything with packaged hollandaise sauce from envelopes, baked it until bananas were soft and sauce bubbled. The kitchen featured electric ovens, glass baking dishes, envelopes of Knorr hollandaise mix, can openers, serving spoons. The ham banana rolls were sweet, salty, creamy, with hollandaise coating the odd combination. The bananas were mushy, warm, tropical, creating texture contrast with salty ham. They cost $2.60 in 1964, fed 6 people supper, equivalent to $24 today. It proved your acceptance of Betty Crocker's tropical food trend when combining ham with bananas, demonstrated you followed corporate recipe development, regardless of flavor logic that made the combination bizarre. Ham banana rolls disappeared when sweet-savory skepticism intensified in the 1980s, and the combination was universally rejected as disgusting. Mother made Frankfurter crown roast every Saturday in 1966, desperate entertaining that arranged hot dogs into fancy presentations mimicking expensive lamb crown roasts. She stood 12 hot dogs upright in circle formation, secured with toothpicks, filled the center with heated canned sauerkraut, baked everything until Franks were browned and plumped. The kitchen featured electric ovens, round cake pans for shaping, boxes of toothpicks, can openers, serving platters. The Frankfurter crown was salty smoky, processed with sauerkraut, providing tangy center filling. The hot dogs were browned crispy on outside and juicy inside from baking. It cost $1.95 in 1966, fed 6 people Saturday supper, equivalent to $18 today. It demonstrated your commitment to fancy presentation when arranging cheap hot dogs like crown roasts, proved you understood Betty Crocker's philosophy that presentation elevated humble ingredients into special occasion meals. Mother made salmon loaf every Friday in 1960, survival engineering that stretched canned fish with breadcrumbs and eggs into meatloaf-shaped dinners. She mixed 2 cans of pink salmon with breadcrumbs, eggs, milk, and minced onion, packed everything into loaf pans, baked it for 45 minutes, served slices covered in white sauce. The kitchen featured electric ovens, metal loaf pans, can openers, mixing bowls, wooden spoons, saucepans for making white sauce. The salmon loaf was fishy dense dry with breadcrumb filler, creating texture like meatloaf but fish-flavored. The white sauce was creamy bland thick, coating everything to add moisture. It cost $1.80 in 1960, fed 6 people Friday supper, equivalent to $17 today. It proved your Catholic Fish on Friday observance when salmon loaf demonstrated you could create meatloaf-style comfort food using fish that met religious dietary restrictions without seeming like sacrifice. Salmon loaf disappeared when fresh fish became accessible in the 1970s and baked fish fillets became the standard instead of canned salmon meatloaves. Mother made deviled ham roll-ups every Sunday for parties in 1967, desperate appetizers that spread canned meat paste on white bread and rolled it with pickles inside. She removed crusts from white bread slices, spread Underwood deviled ham from cans across each slice, placed dill pickle spears on one edge, rolled the bread tightly, secured rolls with toothpicks, sliced them into pinwheels. The kitchen featured cutting boards, bread knives, can openers, toothpicks, serving platters arranged with parsley garnish. The deviled ham rolls were salty paste textured with pickle, providing crunch and vinegar tang. The white bread was soft, bland, absorbent, soaking up ham moisture. They cost $1.50 in 1967, made 24 appetizer pieces, equivalent to $14 today. It demonstrated your party preparation skills when deviled ham roll-ups proved you understood Betty Crocker's efficient entertaining that created numerous appetizers from minimal ingredients through creative rolling and slicing techniques. Mother made pressed chicken loaf every Monday in 1961, survival engineering that transformed leftover chicken into sliceable cold cuts through gelatin pressing. She simmered chicken bones for stock, picked remaining meat from bones, mixed meat with unflavored gelatin and chicken broth, packed everything into loaf pans, refrigerated it overnight until firm enough to slice. The kitchen featured stock pots for simmering, metal loaf pans, sharp knives for slicing, wax paper for wrapping slices, refrigerators for setting gelatin. The pressed chicken loaf was gelatinous cold bland, with shredded chicken suspended in clear gelatin. The texture was slippery, firm, chewy, requiring multiple bites. It cost $2.10 in 1961, made sandwich meat for a week, equivalent to $20 today. Mother made cottage cheese parfaits every Tuesday for lunch in 1965. Desperate diet food that layered dairy with canned fruit, creating meals marketed as slimming despite high sugar content. She layered cottage cheese with canned peaches, pears, or fruit cocktail in tall glasses, topped everything with maraschino cherries, served it as complete lunch with Melba toast. The kitchen featured tall parfait glasses, can openers, spoons for layering, refrigerators for chilling, boxes of Melba toast. The cottage cheese parfait was lumpy sweet cold with canned fruit syrup mixing into dairy, creating odd texture. The cottage cheese was tangy wet curdy, contrasting with soft sweet fruit. It cost $1.40 in 1965, made 4 lunch servings, equivalent to $13 today. It demonstrated your commitment to modern dieting when cottage cheese parfaits proved you followed Betty Crocker's weight loss recipes that promised slimming through dairy and fruit combinations despite sugar content. Cottage cheese parfaits disappeared when nutrition understanding improved in the 1980s, and the sugar content in canned fruit was recognized as contradicting diet goals. The lunch that once proved diet commitment became evidence of misguided nutrition, something modern dieters avoid because combining cottage cheese with syrup-packed canned fruit creates higher calorie counts than the diet food marketing suggested. Mother made kidney bean salad every Wednesday in 1962, survival-driven creativity that combined canned beans with marshmallows and mayonnaise, creating side dishes that defied all flavor logic. She opened 2 cans of dark red kidney beans, drained and rinsed them thoroughly to remove the thick bean liquid, mixed them in large mixing bowls with 2 cups of miniature marshmallows that would gradually soften and dissolve slightly as the salad sat, added 1 cup of chopped celery for crunch and green color contrast against the dark beans and white marshmallows, folded in half a cup of Hellmann's mayonnaise, coating everything in creamy white dressing, stirred gently to avoid crushing the beans or breaking down the marshmallows completely, transferred everything to Tupperware containers with tight-fitting lids, chilled in refrigerators for at least 2 hours to allow flavors to meld, according to Betty Crocker instructions, though what those flavors were supposed to become when melded remained unclear. Served the salad mounted on individual lettuce leaves, arranged on salad plates as side dish for Wednesday suppers. The kitchen featured manual can openers mounted on walls for opening bean cans, ceramic mixing bowls large enough to accommodate the bizarre ingredient combination, wooden spoons for stirring, rubber spatulas for scraping bowls clean, heads of iceberg lettuce for plating, Tupperware containers in pastel colors for storage, refrigerators with adequate space for chilling large bowls. The preparation taking only 15 minutes, but requiring advanced planning since the salad needed hours of refrigeration before serving to allow the marshmallows to partially dissolve into the mayonnaise, creating the intended texture. The kidney bean salad was disturbingly sweet, creamy beanie, with marshmallows dissolving slightly into mayonnaise, creating sticky white coating on beans. The texture was soft, starchy, squishy, with beans providing dense protein alongside marshmallow fluff and crunchy celery, creating complete textural chaos. The flavor was fundamentally confused. Beans tasted savory and earthy, like they belonged in chili. Marshmallows contributed pure sugar sweetness, like they belonged in hot chocolate. Mayonnaise added tangy, creamy richness, like it belonged on sandwiches, and celery provided vegetal crunch, like it belonged in tuna salad. But combining all 4 ingredients created cognitive dissonance, where each bite confused confused the palate about whether this was supposed to be dessert, salad, or some entirely new food category. The beans themselves remained bland and starchy, absorbing mayonnaise but contributing little flavor beyond beanness. The marshmallows became gummy, sticky, coating everything in dissolved sugar, and the celery seemed like the only ingredient making any logical sense, though even it seemed out of place in the sweet-savory chaos. The visual presentation was equally confusing. Dark red beans, white marshmallow pieces, green celery, and white mayonnaise created a color combination that looked festive but suggested flavors that didn't exist. It cost $1.20 in 1962, fed 8 people as side dish, equivalent to $11 today. It proved your acceptance of Betty Crocker's experimental ingredient combination philosophy and willingness to trust corporate recipe development over personal taste. Judgment when mixing protein beans with dessert marshmallows demonstrated you were a modern housewife who followed published recipes regardless of whether the combinations made culinary sense, and that you believed test kitchens knew better than your own palate when they declared that beans and marshmallows belonged together in mayonnaise, bound salad served as side dish to accompany meat and potatoes. Kidney bean salad vanished when the combination was universally rejected. Mother made tongue in raisin sauce every Thursday in 1963, survival engineering that used sweet fruit sauce to mask organ meat's intense flavor. She purchased whole beef tongues weighing 3 to 4 pounds from butcher shops where they cost significantly less than conventional cuts, placed the entire tongue in massive stock pots filled with water, onions, bay leaves, and peppercorns, boiled it for 4 hours until the thick outer skin loosened and peeled away easily, revealing smooth pink muscle underneath. Let it cool slightly in the cooking liquid to retain moisture. Peeled away all the bumpy textured skin while the tongue was still warm. Sliced the meat thin against the grain, using sharp knives creating uniform slices that resembled roast beef, if you didn't think too hard about the source. Made raisin sauce by combining brown sugar, vinegar, raisins, and cornstarch in saucepans. Simmered everything until raisins plumped and sauce thickened to glazy consistency. Arranged the sliced tongue on serving platters. Poured the sweet-sour raisin sauce generously over the meat, covering it completely so the tongue slices were barely visible beneath the dark glaze. The kitchen featured large stock pots, capable of holding entire tongues, sharp slicing knives that required regular sharpening to cut thin uniform slices, saucepans for sauce preparation, cooling racks where the boiled tongue rested before slicing, serving platters large enough to arrange meat attractively, the house filling with the distinctive smell of boiling tongue, a beefy, slightly mineral aroma that neighbors could identify, announcing what Thursday supper would be before you even entered the home. The tongue in raisin sauce was tender, beefy sweet, with the organ meat providing dense protein texture and mild beef flavor. The raisins provided chewy sweet texture throughout the sauce, and brown sugar created sticky glaze that coated each slice. The sauce was tangy, dark thick with vinegar, cutting through sweetness and creating sweet-sour balance that attempted to mask tongue's subtle mineral undertones. The meat itself sliced beautifully into tender rounds with no gristle or fat, making every slice completely edible without waste, and the texture was remarkably similar to pot roast, but denser and more uniform throughout. The raisin sauce, a classic German and Eastern European preparation, added enough sweetness and visual coverage that guests who didn't know they were eating tongue might not immediately identify the protein, though the distinctive dense texture usually gave it away to experienced eaters. It cost $3.70 per whole tongue in 1963, fed 6 people. Thursday supper, with leftovers for sandwiches, equivalent to $35 today. It demonstrated your acceptance of Betty Crocker's economical organ meat recipes and ethnic cooking traditions when serving tongue proved you followed economical cooking advice from trusted sources despite modern American squeamishness about recognizable animal anatomy on dinner plates, and that you understood German Jewish cooking traditions dietitians that valued complete animal utilization and wouldn't waste protein just because it came from an organ that made people uncomfortable when they thought about its original function in the cow's mouth. Tongue and raisin sauce disappeared when organ meat rejection intensified in the 1970s, and the combination of organ meat with sweet fruit sauce was abandoned as unappetizing and bizarre. Younger generations raised on boneless, skinless chicken breasts and ground beef couldn't overcome the psychological barrier of eating tongue, the muscle responsible for a cow's taste and vocalization, regardless of how tender the meat or how elaborate the sauce. Mother made creamed chipped beef every Friday in 1968, survival-driven necessity that transformed dried beef into fancy dinners through white sauce and pastry shells. She purchased dried chipped beef in glass jars from the grocery store, rinsed the paper-thin beef slices under cold water to remove excess salt, though they remained intensely salty regardless, tore the beef into bite-sized pieces with her hands, made classic white sauce by melting butter in saucepans, whisking in flour to create roux, gradually adding milk while stirring constantly to prevent lumps until the sauce thickened to creamy consistency, combined the torn beef pieces with the hot white sauce, stirring until beef softened slightly and released more salt into the sauce, spooned the creamed mixture into store-bought frozen patty shells that had been baked separately until golden and flaky, according to package directions. The kitchen featured a gas stove with saucepans for sauce making, wire whisks for preventing lumps, wooden spoons for stirring, baking sheets for the frozen patty shells, pot holders for handling hot pans, serving plates arranged carefully to showcase the filled shells, the entire preparation taking 30 minutes from start to finish, making it a quick Friday supper option that still looked impressive enough for guests or special family meals despite using shelf-stable military surplus-style dried beef. The creamed chipped beef was intensely salty, creamy rich, with dried beef providing aggressive flavor that dominated the mild white sauce. The beef pieces were chewy, leathery, thin, rehydrating slightly in hot sauce, but maintaining their distinctive dried texture. The white sauce was buttery, flour-thick, coating the mouth with dairy richness that temporarily masked but couldn't eliminate the overwhelming saltiness, and each bite required immediate water or bread to cut through the sodium assault. The patty shells were flaky, buttery crisp, with layers of puff pastry shattering when cut, creating textural contrast to the creamy filling and adding additional richness to an already heavy dish. The visual presentation was admittedly elegant. Golden pastry shells filled with creamy white sauce, studded with beef-created restaurant-quality plating that suggested sophistication despite using ingredients associated with military mess halls and Depression-era preservation technique. It cost $2.30 in 1968, fed 4 people Friday supper, equivalent to $20 today. It proved your ability to create fancy presentations and follow Betty Crocker's entertaining philosophy when serving chipped beef, food associated with military rations and economic hardship, in delicate pastry shells, demonstrated you understood that proper plating and serving vessels could elevate humble preserved ingredients into special occasion meals appropriate for guests, despite the filling being reconstituted dried beef in flour gravy, and that presentation technique mattered more than ingredient quality or cost when creating meals that impressed family and neighbors. Creamed chipped beef in patty shells vanished when dried beef was rejected as excessively salty and outdated in the 1980s, and fresh ingredients with lower sodium became the cooking standard instead of shelf-stable, dried meats left over from World War II surplus production. Health consciousness about sodium intake made chipped beef, which contained astronomical salt levels from the drying and preservation process, completely unacceptable for regular consumption, and younger cooks who hadn't experienced wartime rationing saw no reason to use preserved meat when fresh beef was readily available year-round in supermarkets. The supper that once proved elegant presentation skills and resourceful cooking became evidence of making do with inferior preserved ingredients, something modern cooks avoid entirely because chipped beef's intense saltiness, leathery texture, and mysterious industrial drying process make it fundamentally unacceptable for contemporary dinners, regardless of how much white sauce, butter, and flaky pastry attempt to enhance or disguise it. The dish represented an era when presentation could overcome ingredient limitations and when home cooks were expected to transform military surplus and preserved foods into meals that looked sophisticated enough for entertaining. But that philosophy was completely abandoned as fresh ingredients became affordable and accessible to middle-class households who no longer needed to rely on dried, canned, and preserved proteins to create impressive dinners. These first 10 dinners weren't just unusual combinations, they were strategic acceptance of corporate recipe development that prioritized shelf-stable ingredients and visual presentation over flavor logic. When following published recipes proved you were a modern housewife who trusted Betty Crocker test kitchens. They required suspension of personal taste judgment, acceptance of canned and processed ingredients, and willingness to serve combinations that neighbors might judge as bizarre, but corporate America marketed as sophisticated. The next 5 represent even more intense creative ingredient pairing, meals that combined foods in ways that defied all culinary tradition when gelatin molds and canned meat innovations dominated American cooking culture. Mother made jellied tomato shrimp ring every Saturday for parties in 1960, survival-driven entertaining that suspended seafood in tomato-flavored gelatin, creating centerpiece salads that looked impressive but tasted confusing. She dissolved lemon jello in boiling tomato juice instead of water, added canned tiny shrimp, chopped celery, diced green peppers, and horseradish for bite, poured everything into decorative ring molds greased with mayonnaise to prevent sticking, refrigerated overnight until firm and jiggly, unmolded onto lettuce-lined platters by dipping molds briefly in warm water, filled the center with additional mayonnaise or Thousand Island dressing for serving. The kitchen featured ornate aluminum ring molds with detailed patterns, can openers for tomato juice and shrimp cans, graters for vegetables, refrigerators with adequate space for large molds, serving platters, lettuce for garnish, the refrigerator dominating kitchen space as molds took 12 hours to properly set and couldn't be disturbed during the process. The jellied tomato ring was cold, jiggly seafood flavored with shrimp suspended throughout, creating protein pockets. The tomato gelatin was tangy, sweet savory with odd flavor that mixed dessert gelatin sweetness with vegetable juice. The texture was slippery, wobbly, firm, with crunchy vegetable pieces and rubbery shrimp, creating textural chaos. And the visual presentation, pink gelatin studded with visible shrimp and green peppers, looked impressive but suggested flavors that didn't actually work together. It cost $3.40 in 1960, served 16 people at parties, equivalent to $33 today. It demonstrated your sophisticated entertaining standards when molded gelatin salads proved you owned proper equipment, understood Betty Crocker's party planning philosophy that prioritized visual impact over flavor coherence, and had refrigerator space sufficient for elaborate preparations that required overnight setting time unavailable to families with small iceboxes. Mother made deviled egg casserole every Sunday in 1964, desperate innovation that transformed party appetizers into baked main dishes through white sauce and breadcrumb topping. She hard-boiled 12 eggs, halved them, removed yolks and mashed them with mayonnaise, mustard, and pickle relish, refilled the whites with yolk mixture, arranged stuffed eggs in greased casserole dishes, covered everything with thick white sauce made from butter, flour, and milk, topped with sliced green olives and buttered breadcrumbs, baked at 350 degrees for 30 minutes until sauce bubbled and topping browned. The kitchen featured electric ovens with inconsistent temperatures, glass casserole dishes that could withstand heat, saucepans for making white sauce, egg slicers for uniform cutting, wooden spoons, measuring cups, cooling racks, pot holders with burn holes, the process taking over an hour from boiling eggs to final baking and creating multiple dirty dishes that required hand washing. The deviled egg casserole was creamy, eggy, rich with white sauce, coating the stuffed eggs until they became mushy and lost their structural integrity. The breadcrumb topping was buttery, crunchy, salty, providing the only textural contrast. The olives added briny, salty, sharp flavor that clashed with the sweet pickle relish in egg yolks. The eggs themselves became overcooked through the double cooking process, first boiling, then baking, creating rubbery whites and chalky yolks, despite the creamy filling. It cost $2.90 in 1964. Mother made prune whip every Monday in 1965, survival-driven dessert salad that combined stewed prunes with whipped cream cheese, creating side dishes marketed as digestive aids despite being heavy dairy preparations. She stewed dried prunes in water with sugar and lemon juice until soft, removed pits, pureed the prunes with electric mixers, whipped cream cheese with additional cream until fluffy, folded prune puree into cream cheese mixture, creating marbled effect, spooned everything into individual serving dishes or molds, refrigerated until firm enough to hold shape, garnished with walnut halves before serving. The kitchen featured electric mixers with multiple speeds, saucepans for stewing prunes, rubber spatulas for folding, individual dessert glasses or small molds, refrigerators, the process creating purple-stained equipment that required immediate washing to prevent permanent discoloration. The prune whip was purple, tangy, rich, with cream cheese, cutting the prune's intense dried fruit sweetness. The texture was creamy, smooth, dense like mousse, but with occasional fibrous prune bits that escaped the blender. The flavor was intensely prune-forward, that distinctive dried plum taste associated with elderly digestion rather than elegant desserts, barely masked by cream cheese and sugar. It cost $2.20 in 1965, made 8 servings, equivalent to $20 today. It demonstrated your acceptance of Betty Crocker's digestive-focused recipes when prune dishes proved you understood that elegant presentation could transform foods associated with elderly constipation relief into sophisticated dessert salads appropriate for dinner parties, and that health benefits justified serving prunes in whipped form rather than plain stewed fruit. Prune whip vanished when prunes' association with elderly digestive issues made them unacceptable for entertaining in the 1980s, and chocolate mousse became the standard whipped dessert instead of prune-based preparations. Ringmother made corned beef Jell-O ring every Tuesday in 1966, desperate innovation that suspended leftover meat and vegetables in savory gelatin, creating cold main dish salads. She dissolved unflavored Knox gelatin in beef broth, added chopped leftover corned beef, cooked cabbage, diced carrots, and pickle relish, poured everything into ring molds, refrigerated overnight until firm, unmolded onto lettuce, served with horseradish sauce. The kitchen featured ring molds, saucepans for heating broth, can openers, sharp knives for chopping, refrigerators, serving platters lined with lettuce. The corned beef Jell-O was cold, salty, firm, with meat and vegetables suspended throughout, creating visual texture. The gelatin was beef-flavored, jiggly, binding everything together. It cost $2.50 in 1966, fed 6 people Tuesday lunch, equivalent to $23 today. It proved your commitment to leftover transformation when suspending Monday's corned beef in gelatin, demonstrated you followed Betty Crocker's efficiency standards that eliminated waste through creative remolding techniques that made leftovers seem like planned meals. Mother made fish stick casserole every Friday in 1969. Survival-driven Friday meal that transformed frozen convenience foods into casseroles through canned soup and crushed chips. She arranged frozen fish sticks in baking dishes without thawing, covered them with cream of celery soup mixed with milk, topped everything with crushed potato chips, baked until fish cooked through and topping browned. The kitchen featured electric ovens, glass baking dishes, can openers, wooden spoons for mixing, bags of Lay's potato chips crushed by hand. The fish stick casserole was creamy, fishy, crunchy, with soup creating sauce around breaded fish. The potato chip topping was salty, crispy, greasy, adding texture. It cost $2.45 in 1969, fed 6 people Friday supper, equivalent to $20 today. It demonstrated your acceptance of convenience food casseroles when combining frozen fish with canned soup, proved you followed modern cooking that prioritized speed over ingredient quality, and met Catholic Fish Friday requirements through efficient frozen product use. Fish stick casseroles vanished when the combination of frozen fish and canned soup was rejected as too processed in the 1980s, and fresh fish became the Friday standard. The supper that once proved modern convenience cooking became evidence of processed food dependence, something modern cooks avoid because combining breaded frozen fish sticks with condensed soup creates excessive sodium and processing that contradicts contemporary cooking values, despite the combination being heavily marketed as sophisticated, efficient, entertaining. They required trust in corporate test kitchens that prioritized shelf-stable ingredients, acceptance of gelatin as universal binding agent, and willingness to suspend meat and vegetables in wobbly molds that looked sophisticated but tasted confusing. Mother made Frankfurter crown roast every Saturday for special breakfasts in 1967, survival-driven entertaining that arranged hot dogs into elaborate presentations filled with scrambled eggs, creating main dishes that mimicked expensive crown roasts. She stood 16 hot dogs upright in circular formation in round cake pans, secured them together by threading metal skewers horizontally through all the franks, creating stable ring structure, baked the crown at 375 degrees for 20 minutes until hot dogs were browned and slightly crispy. Scrambled 8 eggs with milk and butter in cast-iron skillets, seasoning with salt and pepper, spooned the hot scrambled eggs into the center of the Frankfurter crown, filling the cavity completely, garnished the top of each hot dog with paper frills cut from white tissue paper, making them resemble crown roast bone tips, served the entire presentation on large platters with parsley garnish around the base. The Frankfurter crown with scrambled eggs was salty processed eggy, with hot dogs providing smoky meat flavor that dominated the mild scrambled eggs. The texture was rubbery, crispy hot dogs surrounding soft, creamy eggs, creating extreme contrast. The hot dogs developed slight char on edges from baking, and the scrambled eggs absorbed some hot dog juice that seeped down during assembly, creating orange-tinted eggs with Frankfurter flavor throughout. The visual presentation was undeniably impressive, a perfect circle of upright hot dogs with fluffy eggs mounded in the center and white paper frills suggesting elegance. But the taste was fundamentally just hot dogs and eggs, basic breakfast ingredients attempting sophistication through elaborate arrangement. Frankfurter crowns with eggs disappeared when the irony of making hot dogs look fancy was rejected in the 1980s, and actual quality breakfast ingredients became preferable to elaborate processed meat presentations. The breakfast that once proved creative entertaining and sophisticated presentation skills became evidence of trying too hard with fundamentally cheap ingredients. Something modern brunch culture finds laughable because arranging hot dogs in crown formation emphasizes rather than disguises their processed nature, and the paper frills attempting to suggest expensive lamb crown roast only highlight the absurdity of pretending Frankfurters are sophisticated protein. The entire concept that proper arrangement and garnish could transform hot dogs into elegant, entertaining food represented peak Betty Crocker philosophy before that approach was abandoned as deceptive and the food world embraced ingredient honesty over presentation trickery. Mother made liver sausage pineapple every Sunday for parties in 1963, desperate entertaining that molded processed liver into pineapple shapes using cream cheese and decorative elements, creating centerpiece spreads that looked impressive but tasted like liverwurst. She mashed 2 pounds of Braunschweiger liver sausage with softened cream cheese and grated onion until smooth and moldable, shaped the mixture into an oval approximating pineapple form on serving platters, scored the surface in diamond crosshatch pattern using butter knives to create pineapple texture, inserted whole cloves into each diamond intersection, creating the pineapple's characteristic bumpy appearance. Shaped the mixture into an oval approximating pineapple form on serving platters, scored the surface in diamond crosshatch pattern using butter knives to create pineapple texture, inserted whole cloves into each diamond intersection, creating the pineapple's characteristic bumpy appearance. Crafted pineapple leaves from green bell pepper slices cut into leaf shapes and inserted them into the top of the molded liver, creating a crown, surrounded the entire liver pineapple with an assortment of crackers, Ritz, Triscuits, wheat thins, arranged in decorative fan patterns, chilled the molded creation for 2 hours to firm up before serving. The kitchen featured serving platters large enough to accommodate the molded liver and cracker arrangement, mixing bowls for combining ingredients, butter knives for scoring, boxes of whole cloves purchased from spice aisles, cutting boards and sharp knives for cutting pepper leaves, refrigerators with space for large platters, the preparation requiring artistic skill to create recognizable pineapple shape from brown liver paste. The liver sausage pineapple was intensely livery creamy oniony, with cream cheese barely cutting the organ meat's mineral intensity. The texture was smooth, spreadable paste-like, identical to eating plain liverwurst, despite the elaborate shaping. The cloves added no flavor since they weren't eaten, serving purely decorative function, and the green pepper leaves were removed before spreading, so they contributed nothing beyond visual suggestion that this brown meat paste was somehow tropical fruit. The taste was unambiguously liver sausage, that distinctive organ meat flavor associated with cheap lunch meat and elderly European immigrants, completely unmasked by the pineapple presentation, which fooled nobody beyond the initial visual moment. It cost $4.20 in 1963, served 24 people at parties, equivalent to $40 today. It proved your commitment to creative presentation and Betty Crocker's entertaining philosophy when molding liver into fruit shapes demonstrated you would invest hours of labor into visual deception that transformed humble processed meat into conversation piece centerpieces appropriate for serving guests, and that appearance mattered more than the fundamental reality that you were serving liverwurst, regardless of how many cloves you stuck in it. Mother made frozen fruit salad every Monday in 1968. Survival-driven dessert salad that combined canned fruit with mayonnaise and whipped cream, then froze everything into sliceable squares, served on lettuce beds. She drained canned fruit cocktail, crushed pineapple, and maraschino cherries, reserving the syrup, whipped heavy cream until stiff peaks formed, folded in mayonnaise, creating tangy, sweetened mixture, folded in drained fruit and miniature marshmallows that would soften during freezing, added chopped walnuts for texture, poured everything into square 8x8 glass baking dishes or metal pans lined with wax paper, froze overnight until completely solid, cut into squares using hot knives, served each frozen square on individual lettuce leaves as salad course. The kitchen featured electric mixers with whisk attachments for whipping cream, rubber spatulas for folding, can openers for multiple fruit cans, square baking dishes, wax paper, freezers with adequate space for shallow pans, sharp knives dipped in hot water for cutting frozen mixture, individual salad plates, iceberg lettuce for serving base, the entire process requiring advanced preparation since the salad needed 12 hours minimum freezing time. The frozen fruit salad was icy, creamy, sweet, with mayonnaise adding tangy richness that clashed with fruit and cream. The texture was frozen, chewy, crunchy from ice crystals, softened marshmallows, and solid fruit chunks, creating textural chaos. The mayonnaise, designed for savory applications, created cognitive dissonance in dessert context, and freezing intensified the tang, making each bite taste simultaneously like ice cream and potato salad in disturbing combination. The fruit became rock-hard frozen, requiring the salad to soften slightly before being edible, and the lettuce base wilted immediately upon contact with frozen square, creating wet leaves that contributed nothing beyond proper salad presentation. It cost $3.30 in 1968, made 12 squares serving 12 people, equivalent to $28 today. It demonstrated your commitment to make-ahead entertaining and Betty Crocker's frozen salad category when preparing frozen fruit mayonnaise combinations proved you owned adequate freezer space, understood that dessert salads were sophisticated courses, and would invest in labor-intensive preparations that could be made days in advance, eliminating day-of-party stress that plagued housewives without proper planning. Frozen fruit salad with mayonnaise vanished when the combination of mayonnaise in frozen desserts was universally rejected as disgusting in the 1980s, and the entire category of frozen salads disappeared from entertaining menus. The salad that once proved sophisticated make-ahead planning became evidence of bizarre ingredient combinations, something modern hosts find revolting because mixing mayonnaise with whipped cream and fruit, then freezing it, creates flavor confusion that no amount of advanced preparation convenience could justify. The recipe represented peak 1960s entertaining philosophy that any food could be improved through freezing and that mayonnaise belonged in all dishes regardless of sweet or savory context. Before those assumptions were completely abandoned, as American food culture developed more sophisticated understanding of appropriate ingredient pairings and rejected mayonnaise's universal application. Mother made pickle boats every Tuesday for parties in 1970, desperate appetizers that hollowed dill pickles and filled them with processed meat and cream cheese, creating finger foods that combined extreme salt with creamy filling. She drained whole dill pickles from gallon jars, cut them in half lengthwise, creating boat shapes, scooped out seeds and soft interior using small spoons or melon ballers, creating hollow cavity, patted cavities dry with paper towels to prevent filling from becoming watery, mashed canned Spam with softened cream cheese and dash of Worcestershire sauce until smooth and pipeable, loaded the mixture into pastry bags fitted with star tips for decorative piping, piped rosettes, or swirls of Spam cream cheese, filling into each pickle boat cavity, filling them completely, garnished each boat with tiny piece of pimento or parsley sprig, arranged filled pickle boats on serving platters lined with parsley or lettuce, chilled until serving time. The kitchen featured gallon jars of dill pickles from bulk purchases, melon ballers or small spoons for hollowing, paper towels, mixing bowls, pastry bags with decorative tips, can openers for Spam, rubber spatulas, serving platters, garnishes, refrigerators for chilling. The preparation requiring precision to hollow pickles without breaking them and piping skills to create attractive filling presentation. The pickle boats were intensely salty, tangy, creamy, with dill pickle brine soaking into Spam cream cheese, filling creating overwhelming sodium assault. The texture was crunchy, crisp pickle exterior, surrounding smooth processed meat filling that tasted like salted pink paste. The combination of pickle and Spam, both extremely salty processed foods, created sodium levels that made mouths pucker and required immediate water consumption, and the cream cheese addition barely tempered the salt while adding greasy richness. The visual presentation was admittedly clever. Green pickle boats filled with pink meat mixture looked festive and demonstrated piping skill. But the taste was fundamentally unbalanced, combining two foods that should remain separate into finger food that guests struggled to finish, despite small size. They cost $2.95 in 1970, made 24 appetizers, equivalent to $24 today. It proved your commitment to creative appetizer presentation and Betty Crocker's finger food philosophy when stuffing pickles with processed meat demonstrated you would invest piping time into elaborate preparations that every Wednesday for luncheons in 1971, survival-driven combination that paired citrus with canned fish, creating salads marketed as sophisticated, despite combining flavors that fundamentally clashed. She sectioned fresh grapefruits, removing all membranes, creating clean citrus segments, drained canned sardines packed in oil or mustard sauce, arranged alternating grapefruit sections and whole sardines on individual salad plates lined with iceberg lettuce leaves, drizzled everything with mayonnaise, thinned with grapefruit juice and seasoned with paprika, garnished each plate with sliced hard-boiled eggs and pimento strips, creating colorful presentation, served immediately as first course for ladies' luncheons. The kitchen featured sharp knives for sectioning grapefruit, can openers for sardines, paper towels for draining fish, small bowls for mixing mayonnaise dressing, individual salad plates, lettuce for plating, hard-boiled eggs prepared in advance, garnishes arranged attractively, the preparation requiring knife skills to section grapefruit cleanly and arrangement skills to create visually appealing individual plates that guests would admire before eating. The grapefruit sardine salad was sour, bitter, fishy, with grapefruit's aggressive citrus acidity clashing violently with sardine's oily fish flavor. The mayonnaise dressing was creamy, tangy, rich, attempting unsuccessfully to bridge the flavor gap between fruit and fish. The texture was firm citrus segments alongside soft, oily fish, creating unpleasant contrast, and the combination left mouth feeling coated with fish oil that grapefruit acid couldn't cut through, despite citrus's reputation for cutting fat. The hard-boiled eggs contributed nothing beyond visual appeal and additional protein that made the dish even heavier, and the iceberg lettuce provided only crunch while becoming limp from sardine oil and mayonnaise dripping onto it. The visual presentation followed proper salad composition rules, alternating colors, height variation, garnish placement, but no amount of attractive plating could overcome the fundamental problem that grapefruit and sardines don't belong together, and combining them created flavor war rather than harmonious dish. It cost $3.15 in 1971, served 6 ladies' luncheon guests, equivalent to $25 today. It demonstrated your commitment to sophisticated luncheon entertaining, and Betty Crocker's salad course philosophy when serving grapefruit with sardines proved you followed published recipes for elegant first courses regardless of personal taste judgment, suggesting the combination was fundamentally wrong, and that proper plating technique could make any ingredient pairing acceptable for serving guests at formal luncheons requiring multiple courses and careful presentation. Grapefruit sardine salad vanished when the combination was rejected as inedible in the late 1970s, and the entire concept of pairing citrus with canned fish was abandoned as flavor mistake rather than sophisticated pairing. The luncheon salad that once proved elegant entertaining became evidence of corporate recipe failure, something modern food culture uses as ultimate example of Betty Crocker-era combinations that defied all culinary logic, because pairing bitter grapefruit with oily sardines creates flavor clash that no amount of mayonnaise can resolve, and represents peak corporate test kitchen disconnect between laboratory recipe development and actual palatability. The recipe symbolized the end of an era when housewives trusted published recipes over personal taste judgment, and its disappearance marked the beginning of home cooks questioning corporate recipe development rather than blindly following instructions that created dishes nobody actually wanted to eat, despite impressive presentation and proper technique. These 25 dinners weren't just bizarre recipes or outdated cooking methods. They were desperate attempts to follow corporate recipe development when one failed dinner meant neighborhood judgment about your homemaking skills, when serving simple unfancy food meant admitting you couldn't master Betty Crocker's published techniques, when guests evaluated your worth as hostess based on whether you owned proper molds and understood gelatin chemistry.